Hello, good to see you. I'm Jess, and this is chat session number 66. Friday, January 5th, 2018. Little tidbits of history. 1933, on this date, construction begins on the Golden Gate Bridge as workers begin excavating 3.25 million cubic feet of dirt for the structure's huge anchors. It opened in 1937, so it took 4 years, a little over 4 years, for this construction of this span bridge. And a matter of fact, I read on through there, and it says that Bank of America bought the whole project to bring work to the local economy. It was just, 1929 was starting, the Great Depression, and it lasted, I would probably say up until mid-30s at least. Real bad time for our country, and this was one of the projects that provided a lot of employment in the California area during that time of no work and people, hungry and stuff. So. But anyway, interesting stuff. At the time when it was completed, it was the longest span bridge in the world, but there's been other ones now that have surpassed it in length. And now we're going to go on to the next tidbits of history. 1643. The first record of a legal divorce in the American colonies. Anne Clark of Massachusetts Bay Colony is granted a divorce from her absent and adulterous husband Dennis Clark. Let's see. By the Quarter Court of Boston, Massachusetts. Sorry about that. I don't know what I was doing. Dennis admitting to abandoning his wife, with whom he had 2 kids, for another woman with whom he also had 2 kids. And so on this date, 1643, the Court of Boston, Massachusetts granted the first divorce recorded in the American colonies. So that's pretty interesting stuff. We are now into the new year, and we have a Attorney General that is trying to reverse all the trend of decriminalization of marijuana, and he's trying to go after the states that have it legal, and saying that federal law is going to override the states' rules, and he wants to totally make it a crime to in those places where it's legal right now. He wants to make it a crime to be caught with marijuana. They call it a possession, I guess. And he needs to be stopped. He needs to be made aware. He has a very narrow, wrong view of what marijuana is. And to make a statement that the reason we have an opiate problem in the United States is because people smoke marijuana is absolutely ridiculous. I just feel strongly about this because it's the people in those states where it's legal for recreational use have voted for that. And so at what point does the government's preference override what the people will? I think that in Jeff Sessions, I think in the case of the Attorney General, I think there's some ulterior motives, and the fact that he's probably deeply invested in prisons that are owned by private individuals or private corporations, and the way they make money is by keeping people in those prisons. And if you make something like marijuana a crime and you put a sentence to it, those people will get the maximum sentence from the judges. They'll go to jail, and while they're in the jail, the prison makes money because they send them out on jobs and stuff and work. And they haven't really committed, they committed something that's against the law, but it's ridiculous. That's where there's very few things that I would say that the government should be involved with, whether it be uh, local or federal or state, is incarceration of people. I think that there has to be some kind of oversight, and unfortunately, in the private sector, the abuses will run more rampant if there's not some kind of oversight committee, and therefore, I think that people that go to these prisons that are privately owned will not receive adequate health care when they need it. Their food will probably be below standard. The the conditions. I mean, it happens in the federal and the state and the local jails now. But imagine if somebody private owns it who wants to save money. They cut down on help. They cut corners because they're trying to make a profit because it's a business. And the people that are going to suffer are those people that are in jail for those crimes of just maybe possessing marijuana. And I just don't think it's a fair system. I think that if we're going to take time to prosecute people, we have an obligation as the country or whatever that's prosecuting, that they at least are treated humanely in the jail. I'm not saying it should be a cakewalk or it's not a Holiday Inn, but I do think that the conditions could really be open for abuse when you take people that are trying to make money off of it. And so I'm totally opposed to that kind of stuff. Now, how did we get on the topic of prisons, profit for prisons? Is because when you make a drug that's illegal, or you make a drug that's illegal and you make it legal, and then the government comes along and says, no, we're not playing that game, it's not legal. I think that you, first of all, well, you take away the rights of the people that voted that way. But then also now you have this thing that people are used to being able to do because it's legal, and all of a sudden you have all these prisons available and everyone's trying to make money. They start giving you all these bullcrap sentences and people are going to jail for weed. And so they're banking, they're making money. And I just think it's wrong. And I think it's wrong on so many levels. I don't know where people's ethics are these days, but to me, it's a violation of a lot of ethics when you can be the top law person in the United States and pass laws that are going to end up benefiting your pocketbook, just in case you're invested in that kind of stuff, where people own prisons and they make money. It's just horrible. It's such a bad thing to me. I can tell I'm sort of getting a little upset about it. I'm not angry at any one person. Concerning this, but I am against the Attorney General on his policy on what marijuana is. They have it listed in the same category substance as heroin. I think that's bull crap too. It is not the same, and it shouldn't be treated the same as far as the penalty when you're caught with it. I think that what they should do instead is regulate these pharmaceutical companies that are prescribing all these downers and Xanaxes and opiates and barbiturates and killing people because they're addicted to them. And then, I think there's just so many other ways. You want to call it a war on drugs? Well, let's clean up the pharmaceutical industry. Let's make them accountable for all those people they're killing with all these doctors writing prescriptions that are out of control for all these drugs that people are addicted to. And then you want to turn around and say, oh, we have that problem because people smoke marijuana? No, I don't think so. I think it's because we have an out-of-control pharmaceutical industry that's tied into all these senators and congressmen passing all these rules so they can continue to sell their product. It's like a legal, drug pusher that has this avenue that's wide open. And I believe that's why we have an opiate problem in this country. And it's close to home. My landlord, a couple years back, 3 years back, whatever, where I was renting from, they lived in a trailer next to the one I lived in, and he didn't wake up one day, because he was an opiate statistic. I think he told me at one time, just in passing, that he was taking like 12 Vicodin a day or something like that. And I thought that was insane. And sure enough, they killed him. And we have these people, they're going to turn around and say, oh, the reason is because people smoke marijuana, that's why we have an opiate. No, the doctors are out of control, the pharmaceutical companies are out of control, but we'll ignore all that because that's big money and they buy all the senators and congressmen that are running our country. So I'm going to call it quits. Be truthful, be happy, and let's look out for each other, okay?